You should be proud other men notice me.
I want respect, not a show.
Why would one harmless smile at a restaurant turn into legal papers landing in my hands? How did one whispered joke become the reason my fiancé gathered proof instead of starting a fight? What happens when the person you think you control stops arguing and starts preparing? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm standing in the middle of all this chaos, pretending I still understand how everything fell apart. But the truth is, I don't. One moment I was laughing at a restaurant, soaking in attention I thought I deserved. And the next my fiancé was looking at me like I'd turned into someone he didn't recognize. I keep telling myself it was harmless, just a smile, just a little conversation with a stranger who actually noticed me. But somehow that tiny moment grew teeth. It followed me home. It followed me into my friends' group chats. And worst of all, it reached Marcus's older brother before I even had a chance to control the story. I still don't get why everyone is acting like I committed some huge betrayal. I didn't touch anyone. I didn't go home with anyone. I just wanted to feel interesting again. But apparently, in this world, wanting attention equals destruction. Marcus isn't shouting, he isn't accusing, he isn't even arguing anymore. And honestly, the silence is so much worse. It feels like he knows something I don't, like he's planning something he won't say out loud. Maybe I pushed too far. Maybe I didn't push far enough. All I know is everything changed after that one stupid night. My name is Liora, and if you listen to Marcus's family, I ruined everything over one smile at a restaurant. I do not see it that way. I never do. It started like any other Friday. I was tired from a week of stupid emails and people asking me to fix the printer like I was the office maid. My boss kept telling me to be a team player. I thought I was the team. I kept thinking, at home I have a fiancé who should make me feel special, not just another item on his to-do list. Instead, every evening felt like a budget meeting. He talked about savings and timelines, and how we should be smart before the wedding. I told him once that love should be fun. He said stability was more important. I decided he just did not understand women, or at least not me. When he suggested dinner with his older brother that night, I almost said no. Adrian is the serious one. He watches everything and says very little. I always felt like he was judging me, the way his eyes stayed on my hands, my clothes, my phone. I told Marcus I was tired and wanted a quiet night. He reminded me Adrian booked the table weeks ago and said we should show we were grateful. I told him it felt like a job interview, not a family dinner. He said I was being dramatic. He told me I was reading too much into things, is what I told Rena later, but in that moment, I just rolled my eyes and went to change. If I had to sit through boring talk, I at least wanted to look good. The restaurant was one of those places where the lights are low and the menu has no prices. Marcus loved it because he thought it made us look like a serious couple who had their lives together. I liked it because people turned their heads when I walked in. I saw it happen that night. A group at the bar looked over, then a man at a corner table glanced up and actually kept looking. I felt a little rush in my chest. I linked my arm through Marcus's, and he guided me to the table where Adrian was already waiting. Adrian stood up, hugged me in this stiff way, and said I looked nice. It sounded like he was reading from a script. Marcus smiled like that was enough. I thought, of course he does. Simple men, simple words. We sat, ordered drinks, listened to Adrian talk about his hotel job. He asked Marcus about work. They spoke about shipping delays and schedules. I tried to join in, but they kept drifting back to warehouse problems and shifts, things I did not care about. I checked my phone under the table. Rena had sent a meme about boyfriends who talk more about their car than their girlfriend. I sent her a photo of Marcus's serious face and told her he was in love with the breadbasket, not me. She replied with crying emojis. I covered my smile behind my glass. When I looked up, the man from the corner table caught my eye again. He sat alone, business shirt open at the collar, jacket on the back of his chair. He had that relaxed posture of someone who is very sure of himself. I told myself I was only looking because I was bored. It was harmless. Everyone sees people. It becomes a problem only when insecure men say it is. That is what I believed. After a while, Marcus excused himself to take a call outside. He said it was work and would be quick. Adrian followed him with his eyes, then turned to me and asked if I was settling into the engagement. His tone was strange, like he expected a certain answer. I told him it was fine, just stressful, and that sometimes I wished Marcus would talk about something other than bills. Adrian said stability was important in a marriage. I said excitement was important too. He gave me this small, tight nod, like he disagreed, but did not want to start something. When the waiter came back with water, the man from the corner table spoke to him, and then glanced my way again. I felt my cheeks warm. It felt nice being noticed. When Marcus came back, he seemed distracted. He said the warehouse was a mess, and people kept calling him. I told him he could relax for one night. He said he did not have that luxury. I felt annoyed. I was sitting there in a dress I chose to impress him, and he could only think about truck routes. In my head, I started a little list of all the ways he made me feel second place. That is what I do. I stack small things until they look like a wall. It happened when he went to the bathroom. Adrian was looking at his phone. Marcus said he would be right back and left his jacket on the chair. I watched him walk away, thinking how stiff his shoulders looked. As I turned my head, the man at the corner table stood and walked past our booth on his way to the bar. Our eyes met for a second. He smiled, slow and confident, and said something soft to the bartender while still kind of facing me. I understood the message without words. He noticed me. He liked what he saw. It was nothing, and also everything at the same time. He asked the waiter if the dish I ordered was good, then said he was thinking of changing his choice because it looked better at our table. It was indirect talk, but his eyes stayed on me, not the plate. I laughed because I knew exactly what he was doing. Adrian glanced up from his phone, frowned slightly, and then kept watching. I did not touch the stranger. I did not give him my number. I only let my face light up. I leaned a little forward when he asked how the wine was. I told him it was nice, maybe a little too sweet, but better with company. He laughed and said maybe he chose the wrong seat. It felt like a scene in a movie, and for once I was not the girl in the background. I thought Marcus should feel lucky that other men looked at me. I thought his brother should be proud that his future sister-in-law could attract attention. Instead, when Marcus came back and saw the man walking away from our table, his expression changed. His jaw tightened, and his eyes followed the stranger to the bar. He asked if he had bothered me. I told him he was overreacting and that we just talked about the food. Adrian said he had seen more than that in a calm, low voice. Marcus asked what he meant. Adrian said it was nothing and suggested we focus on dinner. The mood shifted. Marcus grew quiet, but not in his normal tired way. This silence had edges. He started answering me with short phrases. When I tried to joke about the man at the bar, saying it meant I still had it, Marcus did not laugh. He said it was not funny, that he felt disrespected. I told him he was making a scene without raising his voice. I said if a stranger looking at me was a problem, maybe marriage was a bad idea. Adrian put his fork down and told us we should not argue in public. I said he should mind his own business. For a second, all three of us just sat there, the sound of other people's conversations filling the gap. I always feel more powerful when people are watching. I lowered my voice but used big expressions with my hands. Anyone nearby would think Marcus was being controlling and jealous. I made sure of it. I told him he did not own my eyes or my smile. I told him he should be proud to be with someone other people admired. He said he wanted respect, not a show. I laughed and said, only insecure men talk like that. I saw heads at other tables turn. If there is one thing I knew how to do, it was shape a story. In that moment, he looked like the problem and I looked like the fun, misunderstood fiancé. I like that. After dessert, Marcus barely touched his coffee. He checked his phone again and again. I thought he would explode, maybe slam his hand on the table. Instead, he asked for the bill in this flat voice that made me feel small for a second, then angry. On the outside, I rolled my eyes and stirred my drink, letting everyone see how tired I was of his drama. Inside, a tiny part of me felt a pinch of guilt, but I pushed it down. Guilt is heavy. Anger is easier to carry. Adrian asked if we could talk later. He looked at Marcus when he said it, not me. Marcus nodded once. When we left the restaurant, Marcus walked a little ahead. The night air felt colder than it looked. Cars passed, lights blurred. I put my hand on his arm, and he did not pull away, but he did not lean into it either. I told him he had embarrassed me by making everything awkward. He said he was not the one flirting with strangers. I told him again that I had done nothing wrong, that he was punishing me for wanting attention he refused to give. He did not answer. He just opened the car door and waited for me to get in. I sat there, fuming, feeling like a child being sent to bed without a story. On the drive home, no one spoke. Adrian sat in the back, checking his phone. At one red light, I saw the glow on his face as he typed something long. Marcus's hands were steady on the wheel. I stared out the window, telling myself they were the problem, not me. When we dropped Adrian off, he leaned into the open window and said they would talk in the morning. His tone was final. I felt a tiny twist in my stomach, but told myself he was just being dramatic for his little brother. Later that night, when Marcus went to shower, his phone lit up on the bedside table. I did not touch it, but I saw a new calendar notification pop up before it faded. It said, "Meeting, personal with a time set for Monday morning." I told myself it was nothing, probably something boring at work. I did not know then that quiet things like that can be the loudest warnings. The next morning, I woke up still annoyed, not sorry. That is the difference between me and Marcus. He goes quiet and calls it maturity. I stay loud and call it honesty. He was already gone when I opened my eyes. His side of the bed was smooth, like he had slept on the edge all night or not at all. In the kitchen, there were 2 mugs on the counter. His was rinsed and upside down. Mine still had a ring of cold coffee in it from the night before. The small things always irritate me. Even his neat cup felt like a message. Look how controlled I am. I checked my phone. No good morning text, no apology, just a message from my sister Rena asking how dinner went. I typed that it had been boring and that Marcus had freaked out because another man had talked to me. I added a laughing emoji. She replied that he sounded insecure and asked if I wanted to come to her rooftop bar that night. Free drinks, good music, fresh air. I told her yes before I even thought about asking Marcus. If he wanted to sulk, he could do it alone. At work, I kept replaying the restaurant scene in my head, but I cut it so I looked better. In my version, the stranger only made one joke about the food. In my version, I barely smiled. I left out the part where I leaned forward and told him the wine was better with company. I do that often. I edit my own life until I like the story. In the afternoon, Marcus sent a single message. He wrote that last night made him uncomfortable and that we needed to talk. I rolled my eyes so hard I felt pressure in my head. I replied that he had overreacted and embarrassed me in public. I said if he wanted to talk, he should start with an apology. He did not answer. A few minutes later, a small notification popped up on the top of my screen. It was a calendar invite from him. Talk, 7:30 p.m. I laughed and declined it. Who schedules emotional talks like business meetings? When I got home, his laptop was open on the dining table. A spreadsheet glowed on the screen, rows of numbers and short notes. I did not read it closely. I saw dates, amounts, and words like rent, utilities, savings, boring money things. There was also a small folder icon on the desktop labeled Household. I snorted. Only Marcus would name a folder, something that dull. I closed the laptop with maybe a little more force than needed and went to shower. He came in just as I was putting on makeup. He asked if we could talk now. I told him I had plans with Rena. He asked why I did not mention them. I said because I did not need his permission to leave the house. His jaw tightened again. He said he was not trying to control me, only asking for respect. I told him respect goes both ways, and that making me feel like a cheater over a 2-minute chat with a stranger was not respect. He looked at me quietly for a moment, like he was trying to choose his words. Then he said something about feeling small in front of other people, about how it hurt when I laughed with another man while he sat right there. For a brief second, I felt a sting in my chest. I could picture his face at the restaurant, how his shoulders dropped when he saw the guy smiling at me. I pushed the image away. If I let myself feel it, I might have softened, and I did not want that. I told him he was making a simple night into something huge, and that he should be happy men still find his fiancée attractive. I said most men would take it as a compliment. He asked which men. I said better men. His eyes went cold at that. He did not raise his voice. He just stepped back, nodded once, and said he hoped I had a safe night. His calm annoyed me more than any shout would have. I grabbed my bag and keys and told him he should maybe talk to someone about his jealousy. As I left, his phone lit up on the sideboard. I caught a glimpse of a new contact name at the top of the screen, just a small key emoji instead of a name. Then the screen went dark. I told myself it was probably some boring work thing and headed for the elevator. Rena's rooftop bar was the complete opposite of our quiet, tense apartment. Music played, people laughed, lights from nearby buildings sparkled. I could breathe there. I could be the fun version of myself, the one people liked. Rena hugged me when I arrived and stepped back to look at my outfit. She said I looked like trouble in a good way. I told her trouble was better than being invisible. She laughed and dragged me to the bar to get drinks. 2 of her friends were already there, Mia and Joe, both dressed up, both ready to hear about drama. Rena told them I had a story about a jealous fiancé. I took a sip, then started performing. I told them about the restaurant, but in my own edited way. I said a man asked the waiter about my dish because it looked good and made a tiny joke about the wine. I said I smiled politely. I told them Marcus acted like I had climbed into the stranger's lap. I said he gave me the silent treatment all night and made me feel like trash. I did not mention the way my body leaned into the attention, or the extra laughter, or the warm thrill I felt when the stranger told me I had good taste. Why give them the whole picture when the cropped one made me look better? Mia said Marcus sounded controlling. Joe said if her boyfriend reacted like that, she would flirt harder just to make a point. Rena agreed loudly. She said men needed to understand that attractive women get attention and that it is their job to be confident about it. I smiled and nodded as they spoke, soaking in every word that made me feel right. We took photos. Rena pulled me close and held up her phone for selfies. She said we needed to post something with a sassy caption about independent women. She showed me one picture where you could see my engagement ring very clearly as I held my drink. She said it was perfect. She wrote something like, if he can't handle the spotlight, he shouldn't date a star. Added my username and a sparkly emoji and posted it to her story. I laughed and said she was savage. Inside, I loved it. After a while, the drink started to hit. The music got louder, or maybe I just sank deeper into it. I found myself talking more, telling little stories about Marcus that painted him as boring or stiff, how he double-checked doors at night, how he budgeted our grocery list, how he said we should think about long-term goals when I just wanted to book a spontaneous trip. Each time I told something, the girls rolled their eyes and told me I deserved better. I felt powerful, like a director showing a movie where he was the villain and I was the misunderstood lead. At one point, Rena's co-worker joined us, a guy named Leo. He asked what we were laughing about. Rena said my fiancé freaked out because a man had looked in my direction at dinner. Leo said Marcus sounded fragile. He joked that maybe Marcus knew he could not compete. The girls laughed. I did too, even though a small part of me knew it was cruel. I pictured Marcus's face if he could hear them. I told myself it was his fault. If he had just let it go, I would not be here talking about it. Later, when I went to the bathroom, I checked my phone. No messages from Marcus. My feed, on the other hand, was full of notifications. Likes on the photos Rena had posted. Comments from her friends calling me a queen and saying I looked too good for stress. I shared one of the pictures to my own story with a caption about needing girls' nights because some people drain your energy. I did not mention who. I did not have to. When I came back, Rena was waving her phone in the air. She said one of her clips was doing numbers. She had posted a short video of us at the bar, me laughing, Leo leaning in to say something, my hand on my hip, ring flashing again. The text over it said, "Imagine getting jealous over this." People were reacting with laughing emojis and comments like, "Men are weak" and "Red flag fiancé." I felt a little dizzy, part alcohol, part adrenaline. I told her to tag me. She did. The night ended late. Rena offered to let me crash at her place upstairs, but I said I would go home. I did not want to give Marcus any excuse to say I was wrong. In the rideshare, I stared at my screen. The story had more views. Among them, I saw a familiar username, Adrian. My thumb paused over it. I had forgotten he followed Rena. For a moment, I imagined his face when he watched the clip, when he saw strangers calling his brother weak. I dropped my hand and looked out the window instead. When I reached the apartment, the lights were off, except for a faint glow under the guest room door. Marcus was not in our bedroom. His pillow lay untouched. I brushed my teeth, removed my makeup, and climbed into bed alone. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I looked over, expecting maybe a message from Rena or another like on my story. Instead, on the lock screen, I saw it. A new notification from the app. Someone had tagged Marcus's account in Rena's rooftop video. I stared at the notification like it was some kind of mistake. Someone had tagged Marcus in Rena's rooftop video. My drunk smile, my hand on my hip, Leo leaning in, text over the screen about men being weak. It was all there in that little preview. I tapped it open and watched the whole thing with the sound off. My ring flashed every few seconds. The caption called me a star again. The comments laughed at jealous boyfriends. And right at the top, the app showed that Marcus had already seen it. For a second, my stomach dropped. I imagined him in bed in the dark guest room, phone screen glowing, watching strangers joke about him. Then the feeling turned into anger. If he had not acted jealous, there would be no joke. I told myself that. That line works for almost anything. If he did not do X, I would not have done Y. It makes me feel less guilty. I turned my phone face down and decided he could come talk to me if it bothered him so much. He did not. When I woke up, his side of the bed was still empty. The door to the guest room was half open, but the bed inside was made already. He had been up and out before me. In the kitchen, the same little scene waited. 2 mugs. His rinsed and upside down. Mine with a brown ring at the bottom. On the fridge calendar, a new entry had been added in his small, neat handwriting. It said, "Downtown, 9:25. No note about what, just that. He walked in from the hallway right then, already dressed for work. He looked at me, then at my phone in my hand, then back at me. He asked if I had seen the video Rena posted. I said it was just a clip of girls' night and that people needed to relax. He said it hurt to see strangers mock him when it was his own fiancé feeding them material. I told him he was being dramatic and that nobody even knew it was about him. He reminded me that my ring was right there on the screen and that half our friends followed Rena. I told him if he did not like how he looked, maybe he should stop behaving in ways that made jokes easy. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he did not like feeling like the punchline of my stories. He said he felt small at the restaurant, then smaller watching that video. I shrugged and told him I felt small every time he chose work over me, every time he made a spreadsheet instead of giving me a real conversation. He said he was trying to build a stable life for us. I said stability was just another word for boredom when the other person refused to show any joy. He did not argue more. He just picked up his travel mug, glanced once at the calendar, and said he had an appointment downtown. I asked if it was for work. He said it was personal. I laughed and told him he was not mysterious, just vague. He did not respond. He tapped something into his phone, and I saw, for a split second, a message thread at the top of his screen. It had a title, Follow Up. Then it faded as he locked the screen and left. At work, my phone would not stop buzzing. Rena had sent more clips from the bar. Mia and Joe had tagged me in stupid memes about hot girl energy. I tapped through all of them, focusing only on the heart emojis and the comments that called me a queen. I skipped quickly over one or two that said things like that ring is working overtime and yikes, your man must be stressed. People love pretending to care about morals online. It does not mean much. Around mid-morning, my coworker Hannah stopped by my desk. She asked if I wanted to grab a coffee at the place around the corner. I had a pile of emails, but my brain was not really on them anyway, so I said I could use a break. As we walked out, she asked about the rooftop video. I laughed and said my sister liked to post everything and that Marcus had a problem with fun. Hannah said some guys did not get social media and that I should not let anyone dim my light. I liked that sentence, so I repeated it in my head a few times. Not dimming my light became my new little excuse. The coffee shop was busy but not loud. We stood in line, talking about nothing serious. As I scanned the room, I saw him. The stranger from the restaurant sat at a small table near the window, laptop open, jacket on the chair again. He looked up and our eyes met. Recognition flashed across his face, then this slow, easy smile. It felt like the universe was on my side for once. He closed his laptop halfway and walked over. Hannah raised her eyebrows and stepped aside, in that way women do when they smell drama. He asked how the food at that restaurant had turned out the other night. I told him it had been good, better than the company. That part slipped out before I thought about it, but when I heard myself, I did not pull it back. He laughed and said he guessed my fiancé had survived. I told him I did not know yet, that some people were still processing the idea that other humans existed. Hannah listened with her cup between her hands, eyes shining. I could feel her attention, the stranger's attention, the normal buzz of the room. I grew a little taller. The stranger said his name was Theo, and that he worked nearby, traveling a lot for his job. I responded that traveling sounded exciting, and that my life felt like the same four walls most days. He said some people were made for more than four walls. I leaned my elbow on the little bar next to us and laughed. It felt like a scene again. I like scenes. I did not notice the door open. I did not notice who walked in. I only saw it when Hannah's gaze shifted past my shoulder and her face changed. A little flick, like she was suddenly unsure this was harmless fun. I turned casually and saw Adrian standing in line behind us. He wore his hotel work clothes, that neutral manager look, but his eyes were not neutral at all. They moved from my face to Theo's hand, which rested close to my arm, then down to my ring. He did not say hello. He did not nod. He just watched for a heartbeat too long, then walked over to the other side of the shop and pulled out his phone. That small twist hit my stomach again. I told myself it was nothing. People use their phones all the time. He might have been checking emails. But he stood near the window, talking quietly, eyes still sometimes drifting our way. I did not have to guess who he was calling. Theo asked if I came here often on breaks. I told him sometimes that I liked escaping my desk when I could. I made sure my voice stayed bright, as if nothing unusual was happening. Hannah, though, was quieter. She asked in a low voice later if that was my fiancé's brother. I said yes and rolled my eyes, adding that he was always watching me like I was going to steal the silverware. I told her He was the type who never trusted anyone. It sounded good. It made me the free one and him the rigid one. When our coffees were ready, Hannah offered to go find a table while I got sugar. I stayed near the counter a moment longer. Theo stepped closer, and his fingers brushed my elbow lightly as he made some comment about my dress, saying it brightened the place. The contact was tiny, nothing really, but my skin still felt it. I smiled, let my shoulders relax, let my body language say that I liked being seen. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Hannah stood near the far wall, phone in her hand, the camera facing us. At first I thought she was just checking messages, but then I noticed the lens. She looked like she might be recording or lining up a short clip, the kind people post without thinking. My ring, his hand, Adrian in the background by the window. It would make quite a frame. For a second my chest tightened. Then I told myself nobody would connect all the dots. People barely pay attention online. That is what I told myself when I wanted to calm down. Back at the office, Hannah sent me a message that said she had gotten a funny shot and that I looked like I was in an ad. I asked what that meant. She replied that it was just me laughing while some guy talked to me and that I should relax. I asked if she had posted it. She said she was thinking about it, that it would fit her city life story series. I told her to crop it so it did not show Adrian. I added a smiling face to make it soft. She replied that she would see what she could do. On my way back from the bathroom later, I passed the printer room. The machine was humming softly. On the tray lay a single blank page like someone had tested it. It smelled faintly of toner. That was normal for an office, but it pulled my mind back to Marcus's laptop at home, to his household folder, and the calendar note, and the contact with the key emoji. I shook it off. I refused to be the paranoid one. By late afternoon, my head hurt from screens and thoughts. When I got home, Marcus was at the dining table again, laptop open. This time, there were several tabs at the top of the browser. I saw phrases like storage options, delivery tracking, and notary near me. His spreadsheet was open again, more lines filled now. He closed the lid halfway when he noticed me looking. He asked how my day at work had been. I said it was fine, and that I had just had a normal coffee break. He asked if that normal break included running into anyone from the restaurant. My heart skipped, but my face did not show it. I said, in a light tone, that the city was small and that I had bumped into the guy for a second. I added that Adrian had randomly walked in and glared, as usual. I told Marcus his brother needed a hobby that did not involve judging my breathing. Marcus said Adrian had called him from the coffee shop. He said Adrian had seemed worried. He said Adrian had described me laughing, leaning in, and that there had been another man's hand very close to me. I rolled my eyes and told him his brother always exaggerated. I said Adrian never liked me and was probably trying to break us up. Marcus said Hannah had posted a short clip and that even though the sound was off, the angle said enough. I felt heat rise to my face. I said Hannah was just playing with her phone and that people were reading too much into nothing. He did not yell. He did not list every detail. He only said slowly that the pattern bothered him. He said it was not just one smile or one video, but a line of small things that all went in the same direction. I said he was turning dots into a map because he liked feeling like a detective. I told him normal couples had lives outside each other and that he was trying to cage me. He said he did not want a cage, only basic respect. We went in circles like that for a while. I pushed the blame back at him. I said, if he made me feel wanted, I would not need anyone else's attention. I said if he did not act so cold, I would not seek warmth elsewhere. None of that is fully true, but it feels true when I say it. It keeps me from looking at my own choices for too long. At one point, his laptop pinged with a new notification. An email preview appeared for a second. I saw just a subject line, follow-up. Then he clicked it away. He stood up, took his mug to the sink, rinsed it carefully, and dried it with the dish towel. I watched the neatness of his movements. He told me he did not want to fight anymore. He said he was tired of shouting matches that went nowhere and tired of feeling like the villain in stories I told other people. He said he would simply pay attention and act accordingly. I asked what that meant. He said I would see. The way he said it made my skin prickle. I laughed it off, called him dramatic, said he was not in a movie. He nodded slightly, then picked up a small USB drive from beside the laptop and slipped it into his pocket. It had a date written on a white label. I noticed because it looked too tidy for him. Then he walked toward the guest room. I stayed at the table scrolling through my phone, trying to drown the unease with more noise. As I flicked past pictures and comments, my mind replayed the moment at the coffee shop. Theo's fingers on my elbow. Adrian by the window, phone pressed to his ear. Hannah across the room, phone lifted, camera pointed in my direction. I only really understood how the scene looked from the outside when I remembered the angle of that lens, catching us just as his hand touched my arm. 2 days later, we had lunch at Marcus's parents' house, and I decided it was the perfect chance to fix everything by telling my side first. That is how you win. You get there early, you speak first, you set the tone. Marcus just saw it as family time. I saw it as a jury I needed on my team. The morning started the same as always. His bed in the guest room made too neatly, 2 mugs in the kitchen, his upside down and dry, mine half finished. The apartment smelled faintly like coffee and printer toner, which was starting to feel normal. On the table, his laptop sat closed with a small USB drive next to it, the white label now marked with another date in small letters. He slipped it into his wallet without looking at me. I asked if he was ready to go to his parents. He said yes, and asked if I could try to keep the peace. I told him I would if he stopped acting like I had ruined his life. He said nothing, just picked up his keys. The drive over was quiet. I watched the streets blur past the window and rehearsed my lines in my head. I would tell his mother that Marcus had been distant for weeks. I would say I felt punished over a misunderstanding. I would talk about how much stress I was under, how I just needed some fun. When you sound soft and tired instead of sharp and angry, people stop looking at the facts and start looking at your face. I know this. I've always known this. His parents' house was the same as ever. Small front yard, neat hedges, the same little ceramic bird by the door. Liora opened it before we even rang. She hugged Marcus first, then me. Her arms felt stiff around my shoulders. She told me I looked thin and asked if I was eating. I said work had been crazy. She did not say, "We saw your rooftop video," but I could feel it in the way her eyes studied my face. Inside, I heard Mila laughing in the living room. She ran out and hugged Marcus around the waist, then gave me a side hug. Adrian was already there, sitting in an armchair with his phone in his hand. He stood and nodded at us. His eyes flicked from me to Marcus and back, like he was checking something off a list. I smiled like nothing was wrong. That is half the game, smiling while the floor shifts under you. At the table, people sat in their usual places, except this time, Marcus chose the chair at the long side. Not next to me, but 1 seat over, with an empty chair between us. I noticed. Everyone did. I laughed and said something about needing space for all the food. His father made a small joke about big appetites. No one really laughed. We started eating. Liora asked about Marcus's work. He spoke in calm, short sentences about schedules and delays. She asked about my office. I said I was busy organizing things, that I carried a lot of weight there. I watched Adrian as I spoke. His phone lay face down on the table, but every now and then it buzzed softly. Once, he turned it over for a second, and I saw a notification flash with Marcus's name before he cleared it. It did not take long for me to slide into my prepared lines. When Liora asked how wedding planning was going, I sighed just loud enough for everyone to hear. I said it was on hold right now because Marcus had been upset with me. Her eyebrows rose. She asked gently what happened. I waited half a second, like I was unsure if I should share. Then I started. I told them Marcus had gotten angry because some guy at a restaurant asked about my food and made one small joke. I said Marcus acted like I had climbed into the man's lap. I said he gave me the cold shoulder, slept in the guest room, and let his jealousy ruin our engagement. I called it jealousy on purpose. People feel sorry for women who deal with jealous men. I skipped the parts about my leaning, smiling, the second meeting at the coffee shop, the rooftop video. Adrian put his fork down softly. He said it had not been just one small joke. He said he saw the way I leaned in, the way the man's attention stayed on me, and how Marcus had sat there trying not to cause a scene. His voice was calm, but it cut. I shrugged and said Adrian always saw what he wanted to see. I told Liora that some people like to be heroes in their own heads and needed a damsel to rescue, even if she did not ask for it. I smiled when I said it. Marcus barely looked up. He took a sip of water and said I knew how he felt, and that he did not want to talk about it again at the table. I told him that was exactly the problem, that he never wanted to talk when it mattered, only after, when he could turn it into some serious lecture about respect. I told his parents I felt like I was living with a teacher, not a fiancé. His father shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. Alara's mouth pressed into a thin line. Liora asked Marcus if he wanted to respond. He said quietly that he did not enjoy hearing his relationship turned into a story for other people. He said he felt hurt and humiliated, both at the restaurant and online. He said he wished I cared more about him than strangers' reactions. I told him that was unfair, that all I wanted was to feel wanted, and that if he had been more present, I would not have needed friendly attention from anyone else. I said it gently, like a sad confession, not an accusation. That is another trick. If you sound wounded, people forget you are the one holding the knife. Adrian shook his head. He said nobody forced me to post videos that made Marcus look weak. He said he had watched them, that he had seen the rooftop bar clip, the captions, the comments. He said he could not stand watching strangers laugh at his brother. I laughed and said social media was not real life, and only insecure people cared that much about it. Liora looked at me then, really looked. She asked if I thought it was kind to turn Marcus into a joke, even just online. I felt my face flush. I told her people were too sensitive, and that I was tired of feeling like the bad guy for wanting a bit of fun. For a while, everyone ate in silence. The clink of cutlery filled the space. Mila swung her legs under the table, looking back and forth between adults. I tried to change the subject, talking about a show I was watching, making jokes about my co-workers. Nobody followed. The air felt heavy. Later, as Liora brought out dessert, Marcus's phone buzzed on the sideboard. He stood, checked it quickly, and then stepped into the hallway. Through the doorway, I saw him raise the phone to his ear, his back to us. His shoulders looked calmer than they had the last few weeks, almost settled. He said something short and ended the call. When he came back, he slipped the phone into his pocket, then walked over to the small desk in the corner of the dining room. On the desk sat their old printer and his father's computer. Marcus bent down, opened the lower drawer, and took out a thin, labelled folder. I could read the word bank from where I sat. There was another behind it, marked Utilities, and another labelled Archive A. The neatness of it all bothered me. It reminded me of his laptop at home, of the household folder and his spreadsheets and that little USB in his wallet. He slipped one piece of paper from the bank folder, read it, then put it back and closed the drawer. The lock made a soft click. I told myself it was just boring adult stuff. Still, it felt like watching someone lay bricks while telling you it was nothing. Back at the table, Liora tried again. She asked if we wanted help with anything for the wedding. Marcus said he was re-evaluating some things. The way he said it made my chest tighten. I laughed it off, told her he was being dramatic. I said we just needed to move past this small phase. I reached across the empty chair toward him like I wanted to take his hand. He did not move his. The distance between us felt wider than the space on the table. Mila, who had been drawing on a napkin, finally looked up. She frowned at the empty seat between us, then at the guest chair he had chosen. She asked in a small, clear voice why he was not sitting next to me like he usually did. The whole table froze. No one reached for their forks. No one took a breath. After that lunch, things did not explode the way I expected. Nobody shouted. Nobody told me to get out. Instead, the house went quiet in this strange, heavy way after Mila's question. Liora told her gently to finish her food. Adrian looked at Marcus with this tight, worried face. Marcus just said he was not hungry anymore. He pushed his plate away and said he needed some air. He kissed Mila on the head, thanked his mother for lunch, and walked outside. I told Liora he was just being sensitive. I said kids say things all the time and he should not take it so hard. Liora did not look at me when she answered. She said children sometimes notice truth adults try to ignore. That line made my skin prickle. I pretended not to care. I stayed at the table, ate another bite of potatoes I did not even want, and told myself they were all ganging up on me. Adrian stood up too. He said he would go check on Marcus. As he passed my chair, he paused for a moment like he wanted to say something but chose not to. He only said that everybody there loved Marcus and wanted what was best for him. I responded that what was best for him was to stop acting like a victim every time I had fun. Adrian's jaw clenched. He walked away without answering. In the car on the way home, Marcus drove while I scrolled through my phone. I could feel his silence like a wall between us. I tried to poke holes in it. I told him his brother was turning him against me. I said, Liora always liked quiet girls better, and that I would never be that. I reminded him that I had done nothing physical with anyone, and that this whole thing was a huge overreaction. He listened, or at least he kept his hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road. When I finally finished, he just said we were almost home. That was it. No shouting, no long speech, just that. At the apartment, the air felt colder than outside. He went straight to the dining table, opened his laptop, and started typing. I dropped my bag on the couch and asked if he was really going to bury himself in a spreadsheet instead of talking to me like an adult. He said he was done going in circles. He said we had already talked, and I had made it clear I did not think I had done anything wrong. I told him I felt attacked, by him, by his family, by random people online who did not know me. I said he should be the one on my side. He said he had been on my side for years, and that right now, he needed to be on his own side for once. The laptop pinged. A small cloud icon at the bottom of the screen showed a message. File uploaded successfully. He clicked it away before I could read the file name. On the desktop, there was a new folder I did not recognize, sitting next to Household. It was labeled Archive B. I laughed and made a joke about him turning into a librarian. He said nothing, just moved the cursor and dragged another document into the folder. That night, when he went to shower, I considered checking the laptop. It sat there, lid half open, the screen dim. I walked past it twice. In the end, I did not touch it. Part pride, part fear. If I looked and found nothing, I would feel stupid. If I looked and found something, I would feel worse. So I pretended it did not matter. I went to bed with my phone in my hand, scrolling, searching for any post that made me feel admired. Rena sent me a voice note saying she could not believe how Marcus had acted at lunch, even though she had not been there. I had already told her my version. She called his family controlling. She said Adrian needed to stop stalking my life. She said if Marcus kept siding with them, I should rethink the wedding. Her words felt warm and sharp at the same time. I replayed them twice, then set my phone down. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a soft hum. At first, I thought it was the fridge. Then I realized it was coming from the corner of the dining area. I got up and walked out, barefoot on the cool floor. The shredder next to the sideboard was running. Marcus stood beside it in sweatpants and a t-shirt. feeding in small stacks of paper, receipts maybe, old mail. Each set went in, noise, then thin strips in the bin. I leaned on the door frame and asked if he could pick a louder hobby. He said he was just clearing out clutter. I said he should start with his attitude. He did not answer. The shredder clicked off. He dropped the last empty envelope in the trash and went back to the guest room. The next day, he texted me from work. He wrote that he would be late and not to wait for him for dinner. I replied, asking if he was busy with storage options and notary searches again. He responded with a simple line that he had errands to run. Less words every day. It bothered me, but I told myself it was another form of drama. Silent drama. At work, Hannah stopped by my desk with a careful look. She asked if everything was okay with Marcus. I asked why everybody was suddenly interested in my relationship. She said Adrian had come by the coffee shop again and had been very quiet, more than usual. She said he had asked if she still had the clip from that day, the one with me and Theo. My chest tightened. I asked what she had said. Hannah answered that she had still had it in her archive and that he had asked her to send it. She said she hoped that was okay and that he had told her he just wanted to understand the context. I smiled, even though I felt a little sick. I told her it was fine and that I had nothing to hide. She looked at me for a second like she was not sure if I believed my own words. Then she left. I sat there, staring at my screen, thinking about the date written on that USB at home, about Archive B, about Marcus's calm face when he said he would simply pay attention and act. That evening, the apartment was quiet again when I came in. His shoes were by the door, his jacket on the hook, so he was home, but I did not see him. On the kitchen counter, there was a small yellow sticky note next to his mug. It said, "Bring forms," in his neat handwriting. No explanation. On the fridge calendar, another new entry. Downtown 11:20 a.m., written on a day later that week. Next to it, in smaller letters, there was a recurring event now showing at the top of several days. Meeting, personal. The pattern of letters and times started to blur together in my mind, like a code I was not meant to read. I found him in the guest room, sitting at the little desk by the window. Papers were spread out in front of him. I recognized some old bank statements, printed emails, and what looked like a list he had made, each line starting with a date. He turned the top page face down when I stepped in. I laughed and asked if he was planning a surprise party with all that secrecy. He said he was just organizing his thoughts. I told him he could try organizing his feelings sometime too. He took a slow breath and looked up at me. He said we could not go on like this. He said he felt like he did not know who I was anymore when other people were around. He said he had watched how I acted at the restaurant, at the rooftop, at the coffee shop. He said he had listened to the things I told his family about him. He said he was tired of feeling like he was auditioning for a role in my life he already had. I rolled my eyes and said he was turning everything into a big speech again. I told him if he cared so much about appearances, maybe he should try being more exciting. I said I would not apologize for wanting attention. He stayed calm. That calm scared me more than if he had yelled. He said he finally understood that my definition of respect and his were not the same. He said he could not force me to see it his way. I jumped on that. I said exactly, he could not force me to do anything, and that he needed to stop policing my smiles and jokes. I told him, if he loved me, he would accept me as I am. He looked at me for a long second and said he did love me, but that love without boundaries turns into self-destruction. I laughed and said he sounded like a quote from some boring self-help book. I moved closer, leaned in the doorway, and softened my voice. I told him he was choosing his brother's opinion over mine. I said Adrian had always wanted to control him, and that now he had found the perfect way, turning me into the enemy. I reminded him of all the times I had supported him, listened to him, made space for his career. I painted myself as the only person who ever really understood him. I watched his face carefully as I spoke, waiting for the moment he would break, apologize, say he had been too harsh. Instead, he reached into the desk drawer and took out another small USB with a date label. He put it in the top drawer, closed it, and I heard the tiny click of the lock. He stood up, stepped past me into the hall, and said he was done arguing. I followed him toward the kitchen, still talking. I said he could not just shut down every time I said something he did not like. I said we needed to fix this, and that if he kept stonewalling me, he would be the one who ruined the wedding. He turned to face me by the guest room doorway. His eyes were clear, not cold, just steady. He said he agreed that we needed to fix it, but that shouting in circles was not fixing anything. He said he was going to handle things another way now. I asked what other way, my voice rising with frustration. He did not lecture. He did not list my mistakes. He just said one sentence, quiet and final. He said he would handle it properly. The morning after he said he would handle it properly, I woke up sure he had been bluffing. Men say things like that all the time. They threaten big moves and then calm down once you cry a little, or give them a good speech. That is how it normally goes. I convinced myself Marcus was no different. The apartment felt almost empty, even though all our stuff was still there. His bed in the guest room was made so neatly, it looked like a hotel. In the kitchen, the same picture waited. 2 mugs, his rinsed and upside down, mine with a dried coffee ring. The fridge calendar looked crowded now. There were several meeting. Personal blocks, all the same color, spread over the last weeks. Today had a small note in his handwriting. Downtown 3 Orsau. No smiley face, no detail. My phone buzzed with a message from Rena. She asked if Marcus had calmed down. I told her he was still doing his silent martyr thing. She sent an angry text about him taking his family's side. She said if he ever tried to mess with me financially, we would burn his image online. I liked the idea in theory. It made me feel powerful. It did not fix the knot in my stomach. Around noon, Hannah sent a short message from work. She said she hoped everything was okay, and that Marcus had passed by the office building earlier. She added that he had looked very put together and serious. I did not like the word serious. Serious sounded like decisions. Serious sounded like things you could not walk back with one good apology. By early afternoon, I was pacing our living room. I kept glancing at my phone, expecting Marcus to text and say he wanted to talk. Nothing came. Instead, a notification popped up from the storage company app we both had, about an access being logged. I did not open it. I thought if I ignored these little signs, they would stay small. That is how I live. I do not look at things until they hit me in the face. At some point, I decided I was done waiting. If he would not come home and talk like an adult, I would go to him. I knew where his office was. I knew what time he usually left. I told myself it would be simple. I would show up unexpected, a little dramatic but soft, maybe tear up, say we were hurting each other and that I just wanted us back. He would realize he loved me more than he hated attention. He would tell his brother to back off. That was the picture in my head. On the ride over, I practiced my lines under my breath. I told myself I was brave for taking action. I told myself other women would sit at home and wait, but not me. I would fight for us. It sounded noble when I said it like that, even though what I really wanted was to win. Marcus's office building was all glass and steel, the kind of place that tries to look important. The lobby was busy, people in work clothes coming and going, the security guard at the desk, the faint echo of heels on tile. I walked in, smoothed my dress, and tried to ignore the small tremor in my hands. I checked my reflection in one of the dark windows. I looked fine. A little tired, maybe, but still the kind of woman people notice. Good. I needed him to see that. I texted him that I was in the lobby and that we needed to talk. I added a heart even though I was still angry. No reply. I stared at the typing indicator that never appeared. I thought about marching up to the elevator and asking which floor his team was on. Before I could move, the elevator doors opened. He stepped out in his work shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. Adrian walked next to him in a dark jacket. Behind them was another man I did not recognize, older, carrying a slim leather folder. For a second I felt relief. I smiled and lifted my hand. Marcus saw me and stopped. His face did not light up. It did not darken either. It just settled into something I could not read. I walked toward him, already talking. I told him we were not doing this Cold War anymore. I said we needed to sit down and fix things like adults. I said his brother needed to stay out of our business. I told him I was tired of feeling ganged up on. All of that came out in one rush. I waited for him to interrupt, to say my name, to tell me to calm down. He did not answer me. Instead, he looked to the side, toward the security desk. The older man with the leather folder stepped forward. He wore a neutral face, the kind you see on people who talk to strangers all day. He asked in a clear, formal voice if I was Liora Vale. I blinked at him, confused. I said yes, of course, and asked what this was about. My eyes went back to Marcus, looking for some clue. He kept his gaze steady. The man said he was there to serve me with official documents. He opened the folder, took out a thick packet, and held it out. My name was printed on the top page in big black letters. The building lobby noise seemed to dim. I told him there must be a mistake. He said quietly that there was no mistake and that I had been properly identified. He said the date and time out loud. He said the words notice and complaint and engagement agreement and financial separation. My throat went dry. The paper felt heavy when I finally took it. The first page, right under my name, had a title. It said, Notice of Termination of Engagement and Civil Complaint. Under that, smaller text mentioned defamation and public humiliation, and something about shared assets and deposits. My eyes skipped across the lines, catching pieces instead of full sentences. Online statements, damage to reputation, documentation attached, request for exclusive possession of apartment, timeline for vacating, ring to be returned or value credited. I looked up at Marcus, the packet trembling in my hands. I told him he could not be serious. I said this was insane. I said this was just because I had a little fun and that nobody even cared. I heard my own voice go high and thin. People in the lobby were watching now. A woman near the elevators pretended to check her phone while glancing over. A co-worker I recognized from one of Marcus's company parties slowed down, eyes wide, then hurried past. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. He said he had thought about this carefully. He said he did not make the decision overnight. He said he had kept track of the pattern, of the posts, of the videos, of the scenes in public. He said he had spoken with professionals to understand his options. Professionals, not friends, not his mother. People who wrote words like complaint and possession and damages. I told him he was blowing everything out of proportion. I reminded him again that I had never gone home with anyone else, never done anything physical. I said it was all just flirting, just words, just jokes. He said it was not only about bodies. He said it was about safety, dignity, respect. He said he would not marry someone who turned him into a punchline and then called it love. Adrian stood slightly behind him, not smirking, not gloating, just watching me with tired eyes. I told him he had poisoned Marcus against me. I said he had always wanted to control his little brother. Adrian said one quiet sentence. He said Marcus had done this himself, that all he had done was tell the truth when asked. His voice did not shake. Mine did. I flipped through the pages, desperate to find something I could attack. There were screenshots printed and attached. My rooftop bar story with the caption about men being weak. My laughing face next to Leo at the bar. Hannah's clip from the coffee shop, my ring visible as Theo's hand brushed my elbow. The restaurant receipt with a timestamp, a line noting the table area where the first flirt had happened. Notes about conversations at his parents' house, words like pattern and repeated behavior. tiny references to dates that matched the labels I had seen on his USBs. One page listed financial details: the security deposit for our apartment, the joint savings account he had mostly funded, a note that he requested exclusive right to the lease, and that I would have 60 days to remove my belongings. Another line said he reserved the right to pursue further action if I continued to post publicly about him in a defamatory way. The word defamatory looked strange on paper, like it belonged in some movie, not in my life. I said he could not just kick me out. I said we had plans. I said people would think he was cruel. He answered that people already thought things, and that for once he was not going to let my version be the only one. He said he was doing this in the open because I had chosen to humiliate him in the open. He said he would not hide this in a quiet corner the way I hid my flirting behind jokes. The older man with the folder asked if I had any questions about the process. The word process made me feel small, like this was all just a standard task on a list. I muttered that I needed time. He said all the dates and contact details were in the packet, and that I could respond through the channels named there. Channels, like pipes, like this was water being moved somewhere, not a life. I looked around the lobby again. The security guard was pretending to stare at his screen. The receptionist shifted her eyes away when I met them. A man in a suit walked past, eyes sliding over the scene like it was none of his business. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was only my business and Marcus's, finally no longer wrapped in my pretty stories. I told Marcus he was making a mistake. I said he would regret this. I said one day he would realize he had thrown away a woman other men clearly wanted. It was a weak thing to say, but it was all I had left. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said he hoped I found the kind of attention I was always chasing, and that he hoped whoever gave it to me also gave me the respect I had refused to give him. He turned to go back toward the elevators. Adrian followed. The older man closed his folder. I stood there with the packet in my hands, my name on every page, the words legal notice and complaint and vacate date jumping out like they were written in some other language, and still, somehow, very clear. As Marcus walked away, he passed the security desk and set his building badge down. He said something quietly to the guard, probably about removing my name from the visitor list. I wanted to call after him, to pull him back into the old dance where I cried and he worried, and then things went back to almost normal. But this time the steps were different. There was nothing left on the floor for me to pick up.